I know that you have learned a lot of concepts, right? But remember, at some point of time, this is going to be useful to you. I don't know when, but definitely sometime in your life, you will you will be sitting somewhere maybe in India, maybe outside, having a conversation in a meeting, and there will be a there will be a moment when you don't know whether something is right or wrong in a particular culture. At that time, what we are talking about now will be useful to you. Then you will say, oh, at that day, what Shiva was saying is useful to us. Cross culture learning is not compulsory, but it's an important option because it's like it's like using, when you go to your grandmother or mother, and they always saved something for a rainy day, right? This is for a rainy day. And if you notice, we are learning a lot of concepts, but we are not learning anything so deep, right? But every one of these concepts is useful and important. For instance, you learned ethnocentrism, right? Such a huge topic. People do PhD on ethnocentrism, and maybe one of you can do it. So, in that context, since we are learning concepts, we have two more things to learn. One is what you see in front of you called dimensions of culture. Dimensions essentially means, in this case, what could be the difference between one culture and the other. Understanding the difference will help you understand how to deal with their culture. That's the principle. Understanding the difference will help you understand how to deal with another culture. So in this case, oh, by the way, I hope you guys have got your notebooks open, right? Remember notebooks on which you things with paper that you write down on. Okay, so dimensions of culture. What we are going to look at, just four differences between one culture and the other culture. Since I live in India, I may be able to give you extra information about the culture that we live. But that doesn't mean that other cultures don't have value. The other important that's important to say that yes, I love our culture, but it's also important to find out what other cultures are doing. So don't make judgments about other cultures, right? Don't say, oh, they are doing this, nothing. There are a lot of great things that I love about Indian culture. Great things. So when we are talking about differences, you can look at it in the context of India, or you can look at it in the context of general culture. I have tried my best to be very neutral about the differences in culture. So what are the four major differences? Four major differences. One difference is, how does a culture identify itself? So when I say my name is Shiva, in India, how do I identify myself? Do I say my name is Shiva and I say I'm an individual? Or I say my name is Shiva, and the minute I say Shiva, I think of an entire set of people around me, which is a collective way of looking at myself. Or I am Shiva. I'm sure you people have guessed, you people have started to understand what is collective, what is individual. So when cultures express themselves, they normally express themselves as collective or individual. And we know very well that some cultures look at themselves as a large family, while other cultures look at themselves individually. And here, of course, is a classic example. When I look at myself, the minute I say I'm Shiva, immediately the pictures of my father, mother, brother, sister, everybody comes in mind. And that's how I look at myself. I cannot see myself separate from them. So what happens when the collective culture that I am in and an individual culture, what happens when they, see, for instance, look at this. I just want to explain collectivism a little more to you. So in cultures, family is extended to uncles, aunts, cousins, all of us. One huge culture, right? Huge identity. We cannot disassociate ourselves from that identity. Look at this. This is a classic example of collectivism, right? Because we have name for every relationship, which means relationships are very important to the Indian. Very important to the Indian. So what happens? Okay, father's brother. In English, everybody is an uncle or nephew. Almost every Indian language, every relationship has a name. Chacha, Chittappa in Tamil, Mama, Bhanja, Maruman, right? Brother's son, and all that. And so here, therefore, India, family is involved in decision making. Everything the family is involved. What child the school could go to, what should be the name. I still remember for my son's name, there was so much of discussion. No argument. Everybody was contributing. Everybody was contributing. Of course, ultimately, I think my grandfather's decision prevailed, right? I don't know what my parents wanted to name me, but they didn't want to offend my grandfather, who said this fellow's name should be Shiva. Actually, my full name is Shiva Subramaniam, because they tried to mix both the grandparents' names. One grandparent's name was Sadasivan, and the other grandparent's name was Subramaniam. So what they did was to satisfy both their families, they made it Shiva Subramaniam. When I started off, it was Shiva Subramaniam. And then, of course, because it was more convenient, I was living in Maharashtra. Look how much of culture happens, right? I was studying in Maharashtra, and you can't expect Maharashtrians to say the full name Shiva Subramaniam. So many of them started shortening my name to Shiva, and I became Shiva. It took a long time for my grandfather actually to call me Shiva, because for him, my name was still Shiva Subramaniam. So family is involved in weddings, funerals, and other functions. Everything is family, family, family. The question therefore is, what happens when a collective culture and an individual culture meet? How should they resolve the differences? Now, there is no straightaway answer. You will encounter it yourself if you are from a collective culture and then you go and meet an individual culture. There will be differences. The individual culture will not relate. For instance, in a relationship, suppose you are working in the US, for example, right? And you are from India. So collective culture India, individual culture US. Now India, what you do, the minute we start to talk to each other, we ask about each other's father, mother, family. So the first thing I do as from India, when I meet someone, I'll say, how are you? What is your name? Where do you come from? I'll say. And then I will say, where are your parents? And then I will say, how many brothers you have? How many sisters? So I'm very curious about your family. And you feel nice because, who doesn't like to speak about it? So next time you meet me, you better ask me all these questions. So I'll feel nice. Now, supposing I go to the US and I meet someone, because the US culture is largely individual. I meet someone, that person doesn't know about my culture, right? So what? They're very task-oriented, they call it. So relationship-oriented versus task-oriented. Task-oriented means, this is the job, do it and go. Relationship means, I want to make friends. It's not so important for me to build a relationship as much as make the task happen as much as build relationship. So when the two of us meet and I am in the US, he may not even bother to ask me these questions that I'm used to be asking. I'm used to people asking me about my family. So he'll simply say, okay, this is the job you're taught to got it. I can be very, very upset. I'm saying, no, I should understand that that person comes from a individual. And that's the whole point. The whole point is, before getting into conflict with another culture, can we understand why that culture is doing what it's doing? So maybe in some conference or some coffee, you can tell him that would have been nice if you had asked me about my family. And he's not going to bother. Similarly, if he comes to India, you don't have to worry too much time about asking him, because for him, he may not want to answer those questions, right? So that's how we create what is called cultural synergy, which we will learn later. So this is one difference. Is a culture, the question you ask yourself, is a culture collective or is it individual? So now one dimension you have understood. So there are two types of cultures in the world. One culture is collective, the other is individual. So the meaning of collective is extended family, loyalty, protection, etc. Meaning of individual is responsible for self and immediate family only and all that, right? So decisions are made individually. So collective, individual. The second dimension is equal or unequal. Do cultures look at themselves as equal to everyone else? Do I look at someone and say, I'm equal to you, you're equal to me, whether it's my grandfather or teacher, whoever? So what are the two types of cultures? One says, I'm equal to everybody. There are some cultures where everybody is equal. Where there are some cultures that say, no, this person is more aged than me, and therefore I am not so equal than him by way of age. The other is when a person is more educated, I say, no, that person is much more educated. Hello, sir. I call him sir and all that, right? Many people in all of my students, even though I tell them to call me Shiva, they don't like to call me Shiva. They say sir. Because for them, I'm more equal than they are by way of education. So therefore, there are some cultures who will readily call me Shiva. For instance, in the US, I was teaching for some time in the US, not for years, but I think I took one or two classes, and those students immediately said, hello, Shiva. There were some US students who come to India, and I was taking a class on culture, and I asked them, what will you call me? They all said Shiva. So it's not as if they are wrong, we are wrong, they are right, nothing. It's just that how cultures look at the world. So therefore, we know that in India, at home, parents are respected, which means parents are more equal. We look at parents as more equal than us. Bosses are respected. Naturally, we say hello to the boss, we say sir to him. And teachers are respected. So in India, we look at the unequal dimension as the correct dimension, because we look at themselves as more equal. Now, before that, I'm coming back to this. So therefore, what will happen when let's take an example. Suppose you travel to the US, right? And there let's assume you're the boss and you meet some junior people. You should not be offended if they don't call you sir, because for them, everybody is equal. So the culture that you're learning is equal, unequal. And there's some fantastic examples of equal and unequal. Such a powerful culture may explain so many things, right? Explain so many things. I still remember when my children had to get maths tuition. The maths teacher had to come early, so 6:30. He would come. I would go and pick him up and all that. Young man, he's about 35, 40 years old. And my mother, at that time she was 70. And she also used to wake up with me and give me coffee and all that. Usual, mother-son relationship. So she used to give me coffee. Then I used to go and bring the tuition master home. You won't believe it. When the tuition master, who is much younger than my mother, used to come home, my mother will stand up. So he will say, no, please sit down. He said, no, you are so educated. You're teaching my grandchildren. So therefore, I should respect you. And she'll stand up. And once the tuition classes were over, and the tuition master, we had to stop the tuition because it was over. You won't believe what happened. So the tuition master, before leaving my house, he touched my mother's feet. My mother said, no, why are you touching my feet? He says, no, you are much elder to me. Look how beautifully it works, right? This dimension. And it's a fantastic dimension. You must read more and more and more about this dimension to understand the world. But doesn't mean that those people who look at everyone as equal is bad dimension. Don't judge cultures, please. Don't. Just accept other cultures. You don't have to agree with them. So even if you are 45, 50, a great leader, and you go to a culture that looks at everyone as equal, and they call you by name, just smile. Because you know why they are doing it. And that's the power of this cross-cultural program. You start to understand. And understanding the world is critical for our growth. Critical. So we learned two dimensions now. One is collective, individual. Other is equal, unequal. And then you go on to this dimension. It's a brilliant dimension. So does a culture prefer rules and structure as against dealing with uncertainty and unfamiliar? So therefore, there are some cultures that say, I want rules, rules, rules. Everything should be rules. Everything should be rules. I should know exactly what time is office opening. I should know exactly when it's closing. I should know exactly what is my salary. I should know exactly when is my holiday. Everything should be rules, 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 rules. Because they crave for certainty. They want everything to be certain. While other cultures saying, yeah, but I don't have to have everything certain. It's okay. I will live with ambiguity. If the rules are there, fine. But I will live within the rules, of course. But I will not crave saying everything should be written down on plain paper. So therefore, you know that India, we are always challenged by ambiguity, right? We don't really worry about rules so much because for us, we know that in our country, we have to be able to live in that challenge. And we are quite comfortable. The traffic, actually, you know what? Many times I find that Indian traffic, even though people may say also, it's very difficult and all, I don't find it difficult at all because I personally feel that Indian traffic is easier to negotiate because while you are in the jam, whenever there is no signal, I have not found an accident in a round Tana where there is no signal. People always slow and they signal to each other and they pass by. Train and bus schedules, mentally we prepare ourselves, right? We don't say 6:10, the bus has to come at 6:10. The bus doesn't come at 6:10 for so many reasons. It comes at 6:15. We're not really going to be having a heart attack because some bus came 5 minutes late. So therefore, two cultures. One culture says, I want everything to be certain, certain, certain. The other culture says, it's okay, I can live with the challenge of ambiguity, I understand. Look at this brilliant picture, right? Brilliant. So now we understand. Remember, we said all cultures, definition of cultures are 2,000, 3,000 years old, and we just culture gets passed on from people to people. Look at this. If you divide the map of the world as to those portions of the world that are depending on monsoons and those they are not, you will find that cultures that depend on the monsoons tend to be more ambiguous because you don't know when the monsoons will come. You have to wait for the monsoons. You don't know how much it will rain. Sometimes it doesn't rain. Sometimes it rains a little average. Sometimes it rains too much, but you're able to cope with all that. So ambiguity is being able to manage with what we have. While certainty means we must be certain about what we have. So three dimensions you have learned, right? One is collective, individual. Other is equal, unequal. The third is certainty, ambiguity. And the fourth and the last dimension is time. So some cultures say, what is time? How do I look at time? Some cultures say, time is very little. I have very little time. Other cultures say, I have plenty of time. Right? So that's the difference. One culture looks at the world and says, time is scarce. The other culture looks at the world and says, time is plentiful. So time, in this case, cultures that look at the world as time is scarce say time is linear, like that. That's it. Every minute, I have to account for every minute. There's only the present. I cannot think of anything else. It's very, very urgent. Everything is urgent, urgent, urgent. While time is plentiful, saying time is cyclical. There's always a tomorrow. There's no urgency right now. Everything will happen. Yes, it'll take time, but it'll happen. And timeliness in expression. He says, is an intent. I want to be on time, of course. But you never know, no? There's ambiguity, some traffic. So I will give the space for someone for that 10, 15 minutes. I'm not going to punish someone because they did not come on time. It's nothing to do with punctuality. It's to do with understanding about how people look at time. In some countries, you have to go on the dot for a meeting. In some countries, you have to go early for a meeting. In some countries, you can go after the appointed time. So try to find out. I have a very nice book suggestion for you to find out how different countries look at time. So try to find out how countries look at time. And there's a fantastic dimension because it helps you understand why in some cultures time is cyclical, why in some cultures time is scarce. So therefore we know in India time is plentiful. We like time, right? We like to relax. And therefore, in India, weddings go on for 3-4 days. So nice it is, right? 3-4 days, lot of tamasha. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of talking, chatting. We get together. People take leave for weddings and all that. Festivals, Durga Puja, 10 days, right? We had recently attended in my building. They had Durga Puja celebrations, and we used to wait for the festivities to start. Of course, not to say about the food and all that, and conversations. When we meet someone, we are not in a hurry. We talk a lot. We talk for a long time. Sometimes we talk with the door of our house open, right? After they have said bye, we start talking to each other, right? And look at this. This is the reason as to why some cultures look at time as scarce, some cultures look at time as plentiful. Cultures that have lot of sunlight look at time as plentiful, because there's so much time, right? Now, cultures that have very little sunlight have to finish everything in that 2-3 hours of sunlight. So they look at time as scarce. So don't think the time, this particular dimension, anything to do with punctuality. It's not. Punctuality is a different subject altogether. Here we're talking about how cultures look at time. So what you have learned are the 4 dimensions of culture. What are the 4 dimensions? Collective, individual; equal, unequal; certainty, ambiguity; time is scarce; time is plentiful. Just to give you an idea, what will happen now, you will start to understand that cultures are different. You will start to understand it's okay that all the cultures are not the same. You will start to accept other people's cultures. Other people will start to accept yours, and the world will be a beautiful place like that. Because the world, it cannot be the same, right? There's so much of geographical, historical, cultural factors that affect each one of us. And learning cross culture helps you smile at other cultures, curious, wanting to know other cultures, and helps you, most importantly, get along with anyone in the world. And finally, I have to give you 2 or 3 case studies which are important for you, so that you understand, in case you are, let's say, the leader in an organization and you want to know how to resolve conflicts. The next one is for that.